you so much for attending the presentation. So don't worry, this is being recorded. If you happen to miss parts of this recording, I will send you the recording as long as you pre-registered. So let's get started. So Rich and I are here to talk about basically some very common things that people like to work on, whether it be indirectly or indirectly, right? So directly would be more like let's get healthier, let's lose some weight, how do I get the body that I want? And ultimately, all that is really for, feeling more happy, right? So I figure we'll talk directly about what it takes to feel more happy, to obtain happiness, and of course, then we'll talk about, well, what are the strategies that you need to do in order to achieve, the body that you want? What are the tips? What are the strategies that are the most effective at doing that? And that's what Rich is going to do. So I'm going to start off the presentation just talking about basically, what is happiness and why is that important for you? And the reason it's important is because the history of mankind, if you look at what has happened, there was a time where houses didn't have bathrooms. There were times where even the richest, people didn't even have chairs. We now have more luxuries and more things available to us now than ever before, right? So even though the news says everything's horrible, but if you look at, now, between now and, 100 years ago and another 100 years ago and 100 years before that, again, we have more things than ever before. But yet, if you look at the studies in terms of measuring how happy people are, the level of happiness has actually decreased. All right, so not much different, definitely not an increase, a slight decrease. So we have to wonder, like, how is that? Right, we have, like, life is easier now than ever before, but yet we are less happy. And so that's why I wanted to focus the first half of this presentation on how do you actually obtain happiness, right? And so, one of the biggest things to realize that things don't make you happy. It's not about obtaining, more money, more cars, or even having, safety with money. It really has nothing to do with what you have, believe it or not. It has nothing to do with what happens to you, believe it or not. Some people may look at, well, that person is just so lucky. They have this and they have that, and therefore they must be happy. But again, if you look at research where they survey people who you would think are happy, let's say, I don't know, celebrities, they have wealth, fame, and all that stuff, they're actually not any more happy than you and I, right? And it's because happiness has to be cultivated. It's like a thing that you got to work at, right? It's not just by chance. You can develop the skill and the habit of being happy, and you just have to work at it like anything else. So that's why we're going to talk about that in the first half of this presentation. So you have the framework, you have the knowledge on how to obtain happiness, right? So let's get started. So first of all, what is happiness, right? So one, the first thing you need to realize is you have control over happiness, right? So you don't have control over what happens to you, right? Like, I don't know, you could walk across the street and a car can come out and hit you. You could go to an event or have some type of plan, something, and that thing or event can go wrong. You can have unexpected things that happen to you, and you can also have expected things that happen to you. You plan to achieve X, and X does happen, but sometimes Y happens. However, there's a lot of that is actually not in our control. And so a lot of times people think everything has to kind of work out for me or I to be happy. And so the research shows that's actually not the case, because it's not the external event that makes you unhappy or happy. It's how you perceive the event or the circumstance that dictates if you're happy or not, right? And so this is a battle of interpretation, right? So no matter what happens in your life, it's how you interpret it and how you control your sort of inner experience that will dictate if you're going to be happy with that circumstance or not, right? So it's all about just controlling your consciousness. It's how we interpret, stuff that happens to us, and it's not about what actually happens to us. Now, I know this sounds kind of generic, right? And so I can give you some specific examples, right? And so I know, for example, in my life, there are times where, as a business owner, right, we want to plan, we budget things, and we expect things to work, and we have numbers, and we kind of forecast things. But there are times, like in our business currently, we're facing a little cash flow issue because certain billing things won't happen. And so I could experience that as something that's unhappy or chaotic. But luckily, I have to realize I have a choice. I have a choice to look at the circumstance and the situation as well. It's a challenge. Like any challenge, most people like challenges to overcome, and that's all that is, right? It doesn't matter if the circumstances, instead of judging it simply as good or bad, it's a circumstance that represents a choice or an obstacle, or you can look at it as a gift, right? Something good can come out of it as long as you interpret it that way, right? And so once you sort of realize that this is sort of in your control because you control your internal representation or internal interpretation of the event, then the next question is, well, how do I build that skill, right? How do I build a skill of being happy? And so we'll talk about that in later slides, and we'll talk about some action items you can do to literally build your skill of happiness. Okay. Now, before we get to that, it's really important to look at, well, what are the obstacles of happiness, right? What's stopping people from obtaining happiness? And so there are two main things that stop us from feeling happy. One is chaos, right? So I'll talk about that in detail. So basically, the world, the universe around us, unfortunately, was not designed for things to be easy, right? Because there's a lot of chaos, right? So random stuff happens all the time. There's stuff, even now with the invention of the internet, we actually know more about the world than ever before because information is instantly transferred. And because of that, there's actually a heightened sense of chaos, right? Because before the internet, before cell phones, and even before TVs, you pretty much only knew what happened pretty much in your town, right? And now we have information that's happening, around the world, different disasters and plane crashes that's all over the news. And unfortunately, the news likes to report negative news. So there's this perception of chaos. And that mindset that's spread through the media tends to taint our overall perception of things, right? And so over time in the history of man, there's been things that's been I don't want to say invented, but things developed to help us control this belief of chaos. And that's typically, in different societies, religion, right? Religion is a way to help make things make sense, right? Let's say in Christianity, you can say, well, God works in mysterious ways, right? When something unexpected happens or something that you're like, oh my God, that tragedy, you're like, well, that's God works in mysterious ways. It tends to basically make what may seem like chaotic, random things in life make sense and give it meaning. And that's extremely important because you have to have meaning in your interpretation of these external events. If not, it's crazy. Like you're just like, oh my God, the world is chaotic, right? And so one way to contain or to interpret chaos is not chaos is you have to have a strong belief system, right? So and you have to sort of tie what's happening in these external events and things that you're experiencing back to your internal beliefs. And when your internal beliefs are very strong, right, so an example of that is someone who has a very strong sense of faith, let's say in their religion, they tend to be happier because things make sense to them. Everything is grounded and it gives density to that experience instead of feeling like, oh my God, just random stuff happens to me. Okay, so the second thing is dissatisfaction. This is extremely important. This kind of ties back into my introduction about, we have more things now than ever before, but people are not more happy. And the reason is when you set sort of a goal, whether it be, to lose 5 more pounds or to make $5 more or to obtain X event or X object, once you obtain it, dissatisfaction kicks in, meaning you're going to want more. That's human nature, right? And so this satisfaction, human nature instinct in us tends to sort of decrease happiness because in a way it's almost like it's hard to be satisfied with what you have because you'll be happy when you first obtain it and then all of a sudden you're like, I kind of want more, right? And there's one main thing that's happening to us that's sort of making us do that, and the main thing is the media, right? So we're constantly bombarded with messages that you have to have more, you want this and you want that. And the reason is those companies are trying to sell you their stuff or their service. And so, and you can't, we live in that system, right? It's the system of I hate to say it's mind control, right? So the corporations want us to be dissatisfied with now, so we pursue the future. Now, there's nothing wrong with setting goals. We all should, and I'll talk about that later. We have to set goals to actually be happy and to succeed. However, we can't forget that we have to recognize that we are living in this system of, companies making us feel in a way dissatisfied. And so once you recognize that game, you can say, you know what? There's nothing wrong. There's no dichotomy between being happy with now, exactly what you have right now, but yet, setting goals to achieve more in the future, right? So whereas many people feel like they need that future goal to be happy, and whereas you really can be happy with everything now, but yet still set goals for the future. So it's very important to have that clear distinction, right? So don't let the wanting of more be the thing that's holding you back from enjoying now. All right? So, side effects of happiness. Well, what I mean by this is, interestingly, if you ask yourself, are you happy or not, just questioning your happiness actually decreases your happiness. And just like if you're like, okay, I'm going to go forward and I'm going to spend the next week, the next day, even the next hour trying to obtain more happiness, that doesn't work either, right? Because your mind is like, happiness is it's a feeling, right? So happiness has to come as a side effect of other intentions, right? And so I'll talk about that again in a later slide. Basically, I just want to introduce the concept where your goal is to focus on other things, and when you do that in a certain way, you become happy. Okay, and there are steps to sort of achieve this, but you just have to recognize that you can't just go straight towards happiness. You kind of have to focus your attention on some other things. Okay, so how do you find it, right? So the key is these four things: goals, immersion, judgment, and present. And now let's go through these things in detail, right? So the first thing is you have to have goals, right? So the goal is something that you set, and Rich will talk about some goal things very specifically to fitness and getting the body that you want. But for overall happiness, you have to have some higher purpose goals, right? And so beyond goals of just losing 5 pounds or obtaining this or obtaining that, you do want to have those sort of, I consider, short-term immediate goals, but you also have to have big life purpose goals, right? And that's why there's books like The Purpose-Driven Life. They talk about, when you find that true purpose in your life, what happens is it changes your belief system. And like I talked about, in that sort of chaotic world, without a strong belief system, these what may seem like random acts and things that may be perceived as being unfortunate will tend to break you down and bring you down in your mindset. But when you have a strong life purpose, not only will what may be considered setbacks not set you back, they're just viewed as challenges for you to overcome when you find this sort of higher purpose. And so recently I actually read a great book on how to find your higher purpose, or in the Indian culture it's called Dharma. And the book is called The Great Work of Your Life. Highly recommended. Basically it talks about a process of talking and thinking and acting and doing what you were meant to do on this plane of consciousness or earth, right? And so having these higher purpose goals and finding a purpose is the foundation. So once you have that, the next thing is immersion. And so, well, what is immersion? Think of it as it's like merging action and awareness together. Or the other way to word that is, it's becoming one with the activity. And so this is actually extremely, extremely hard for most people, because we're living in a day and age where someone can text you, or there's some push messages that pop up maybe from Facebook onto your phone, or maybe we feel like we always need to be multitasking because we're short on time trying to get more things done. So it's very hard for us to be immersed in just that activity, because we're bombarded by stimuli all the time, right? For example, fortunately we're guilty of it. Like, we have TVs in front of the treadmill, so when you're on the treadmill, you're not one with the treadmill and actually really one with the act of walking. You're now distracting your brain by watching the TV, hopefully to have the time pass faster as you're walking. Now, we do have that because there is absolutely a demand for that. However, I am here to tell you that you will be much happier if you simply just took the time to immerse yourself in that act, right? So another example would be, people will watch TV shows about painting, about basketball, about whatever you want. Instead of actually doing that, like we've become a society of let's watch other semi-famous or famous people do it so we feel good instead of actually doing that activity ourselves. And so if you look at research, the actually doing the activity and being engrossed where, you know, sometimes when you do things, you know, where you're immersed in it, where time flies, right? You lose track of time, and it's because that's the effect of immersion in the activity. You do it because you love it, and time just flew by. Now imagine if you were able to accomplish that day in and day out in all activities, and you can, right? And so it's a skill of just being immersed and giving your all, 100% attention to that activity, so you just derive such high levels of enjoyment and happiness from it, right? Again, easy to say, hard to do, because again, we live in this society of multitasking and trying to get a lot done. All right, so next thing is judgment, right? So this is external and internal. A lot of times when we're doing things, we are judging ourselves. You know, am I doing a good job? Am I doing a bad job? Is this right or is this wrong? Does this look good? Does this not look good? And then there's external judgment, you know, fear of other people judging us. You know, what do I look like? What if I look this way, or what if I'm perceived that way? And so the judgment, or the judge, essentially is another roadblock to happiness. Because if you think about it, if you're thinking about being judged or you're judging yourself, that means you're not immersed in the activity, right? So it goes back to the immersion, because you are now splitting your consciousness into two things. Half of your brain has to be thinking, is this good or bad? Or do other people think, is this good or bad? And the other half of your brain has to be actually doing whatever you're doing at that moment. And it doesn't matter if you're cleaning your kitchen, cooking, driving a car, doing some type of activity at work, or doing your favorite hobby. Right? It doesn't matter, right? So the sense of this judge is it's one of the biggest roadblocks to happiness. So losing that sense and being detached from judgment is a huge, huge variable in obtaining happiness. Okay, and so the last one is simply being present, right? And so this is really about enjoying moment to moment, right? And not thinking about the future. Because when you think about the future is what gives us stress, right? Worrying about what is for dinner later, what am I going to cook, to, oh my God, what's going to happen next week, to, you know, what's going to happen next year, or oh my God, what is that thing that's coming up, what do I have to do for that? However, when you're thinking about the future, your mind is not taking in the beauty of now, right? And so the science looks at, you know, there's amazing beauty and amazing love and joy in now, right? Things that we don't even perceive anymore. You know, a lot of times, let's say if you're driving somewhere, your brain, have you ever had experiences, you get there and you don't even remember how you got there. You don't remember which road you took, right? This is very common if you're driving to the same place all the time, where you're taking the same roads all the time. You can get there and not have much of a memory of how you even got there, the experience of getting there. The reason is because your brain goes on autopilot. And if you want to think about what that means, is that means that drive, whether it be a 5-minute drive, a 50-minute drive, you basically lost that experience. Your brain actually had no consciousness doing that because it was on autopilot. Now, to take that even further, think about the other parts of your life that you do that to, right? Are there things that you're doing where you're just on autopilot? Because autopilot is like anti-happiness, right? Because you're just doing and not feeling and experiencing. And so to experience happiness, it's about just soaking in this second, and the next second, soaking in that second, and enjoying the present. Right? So these are the 4 things you have to find in order to obtain happiness. So conceptually, right? So let's talk about some daily things that you can do to achieve happiness. Okay, so action items, right? So I should mention that if you have any questions during this, you can just kind of type in the chat box and we can answer any of those questions. So here's some action items you can do to actually help you obtain happiness. One is journal every day, right? So you can just get, you know, blank notebook paper and write down some thoughts, free flow, just letting your thoughts, like no filter, don't worry about spelling or whatever, just kind of let thoughts come through and just kind of write down. That's a style of journaling. Another style is basically a little bit more structured, and what you do with that is you write down first thing in the morning, what are you grateful for that day, right? So showing gratitude or thinking about gratitude automatically, makes you focus more on happiness, right? So you can write down 1, 2, or maybe 3 things that you're grateful for that day, and you can, think of different things each day. And on the same thing, you can also write down what are your intentions for the day. How do you want to feel? Like, what do you want to accomplish? Now, this is different than having a to-do list, right? Because those of us that have to-do lists, everyone does, realize you'll never get through your to-do list, because the human psyche is, once you knock a few things off the to-do list, you're going to fill it with some other stuff. So this is not about to-do list. This is just focusing on 1 thing or 2 things that will make you feel amazing today, right? And so if this free flow, unstructured approach is kind of tough for you, I would recommend just going online and just search for the 5-minute journal. It's called the 5-minute journal. Basically, you can buy this 5-minute journal. In there, it has day-to-day pages that you fill out that basically does this. It's going to say, 3 things that you're grateful for, 3 things that you would do today to make today amazing. And then at night, you would just write down, 3 things that happened today that were amazing. And so that just really puts you into the mindset of appreciating the day and what happened. All right. So second thing is focus on your breathing, right? So there are many things that we need for life. We need water, we need food, in a way we need sleep after a while. But the thing that we can't go without after like 5 minutes is breathing. And I want you to think about this. How often do you take time during the day to think of nothing else except breathing, which is the most essential thing for life? Think about that, right? So if your answer is 0 or 1 or 2, maybe that's not enough. Think about, if that is essential for life, what are other things that you're not thinking about that's essential for life, right? Because again, we tend to run a lot on autopilot. So taking the time, maybe 2 to 3 minutes each time, and doing that once or twice at least a day to focus on nothing else except your breathing, tends to center you and make you, it's like practicing being in the moment, or practicing being and focusing in the present, right? So that's an easy thing to do. You could do that just, ideally sitting somewhere and just, away from distractions, and just kind of focus on your breathing. This is basically like a stepping stone towards, whether you want to call it meditation or mindfulness. I don't want to go that deep, just focus on breathing is a great start. Okay, so the third thing is set intentions, and I kind of touched on this in the journals. You want to set, what are you going to do that day? What is going to happen today? Not a to-do list, not like, I need to go grocery shopping and things. Set intentions of what are you going to do today that you find enjoyable, that's going to make it amazing, that's going to make it awesome, that's going to make you happy, right? So those are great intentions to set. All right, so the last thing is do 1 thing for yourself at least this week. I was going to put this day, but everyone's kind of busy, so I figured this week. What I mean by this is, from experience in treating and working with clients and patients, more so now than even just 5 years ago, and more so 5 years ago than 10 years ago, is everyone just seems to be busier and busier, right? And so a lot of that is because we are now more connected with everyone else than ever before, because we all have cell phones. And so we're literally constantly bombarded, like we can't have our own space anymore, right? We're always doing stuff, or answering things for other people, or doing things. And so that tends to bring down your happiness, right? It sort of increases this sense of chaos. So self-love and taking care of yourself is extremely important. And that's why I recommend just doing 1 thing for yourself, like whether it be, get a massage for yourself, or, maybe like go to the park, and especially if the weather's nice, like sit and, feed the ducks, or go fishing, or, take a walk and go and enjoy nature outside. I don't mean walk like to burn calories, but walk for the enjoyment of walking, right? You're doing something for the enjoyment of that, not as a goal of obtaining something else, right? And so pick something that you love to do. Maybe you play guitar, maybe you, whatever hobby that you just love to do that this week, right? And set a goal of doing that on a regular basis. Like, take time for yourself. Okay, and so I hope you found these, strategies and sort of daily things helpful. So now we're going to go from sort of broad overview of happiness to some specific strategies and things that you can do to help you achieve your, fitness and health goals. And we're going to have Rich take you through that.
Hey guys, how you doing? Like Steve talked about, like a lot. There's a lot of information out there on nutrition, and you can get as much information as you want. But the thing is, are you actually taking action on that? And today we're to talk about some habits that you can take on and hopefully implement into your life. The goal here is not to dump a bunch of information on you. All right. The goal is to maybe take one thing and apply it to your life today, and then take another thing and apply it next week until it snowballs into something great. So the first thing we're to go over is you need to have a plan. You know, without a plan, you fail. So with that said, we're to talk about food prep. So for instance, like think of like a Sunday, and a lot of us have downtime on a Sunday. Maybe set aside like a couple hours, and during that time, what you could do is write out a menu for the week. Perhaps go food shopping, and also prepare your meals for that week. So just set aside that time for yourself, so this way you are prepared, and it'll basically save yourself some time during the week. And plus, you won't have an excuse to say to yourself, "Oh, I'm too busy," because you'll take care of it that day. The other thing is the breakfast ritual. This is something I do every morning. So I wake up, guys, at 4:30 in the morning, and I prepare my food every single morning. And what I do is I chop up my vegetables. It's actually best to chop up your vegetables right away, because that's like the freshest. And then what I do is I make my lunch. And if you're doing like a liquid diet, what you could do is like bring a blender maybe to work, which would be easier. It's more convenient. And then also you can put some of your ingredients in like shaker bottles, which is something I do every morning. So for instance, like you could put certain proteins in there. You can also put some oatmeal in there, maybe some flax seeds, maybe some chia seeds, which are some good fats. I know a lot of people out there travel quite a bit. Either we're traveling for work, or we're traveling on vacation, or we're just traveling for like our job. And there's certain things that you can do that'll actually, get you prepared for traveling. And the one thing is, if you're going to stay at a hotel, maybe choose a hotel with a kitchen. And if you do have that kitchen, then therefore you'll be able to prepare your food a little bit more. Another thing you could do is maybe ship your items beforehand. Maybe collect all the items that you're going to have, maybe on vacation or on a business trip, and send them beforehand, and they'll be there waiting for you. Another thing that I do all the time is I know people see this, my cooler. So with the cooler, you obviously have all your foods in there. You're all prepped for today, and this way you'll be able to manage your intake throughout the week. The other thing is, if you are traveling, maybe you want to obtain like the restaurant as far as like menus are concerned. One of my clients actually made up an awesome point. He actually sent me an email of the actual restaurant menus, which was pretty cool. So he asked me, "Hey, Rich, what should I do?" And I said, "Oh, this is awesome." And we looked at it together, and we came up with a like distinct plan of what would be good for him to take in at the restaurant. So what I'm saying is, a lot of people think that when you're on a nutrition plan or on a diet, you're not allowed to like go out. And you don't want to do that. You don't want to limit yourself to experiencing things in your life. So you can go out, but you have to basically manage what you're taking in when you actually go out to eat. Another thing is, when you're traveling, maybe bring your protein and maybe some mixed vegetables or powdered greens, which are good. That's another alternative to vegetables, which you can pick up at any supplement store. I'm sure Amazon actually has like certain supplements as well. The next thing we're to talk about is a kitchen makeover. And when you think about the kitchen, a lot of us, you want to basically go through your kitchen, and you want to remove all like the processed items like dressings and snacks, and replace it with like unprocessed, good nutrient dense alternatives. So what I mean is, like, go through your cupboard right now, today, look through it. Do you have like chips? Do you have like bagels? Do you have any like snack foods or anything that's like artificial, like those 100-calorie snack packs, which a lot of people take in? And get rid of it, because if it's there, you're going to end up actually taking it in. Another thing is, like, do an inventory. Maybe look, do you have any pots? Do you have like shaker bottles for protein shakes? Do you have food storage containers? Do you have, most important, like a food scale and measuring cups? Because without a scale and measuring cups, you can't manage what you can't measure, okay? And also Ziploc bags. You can put all your fruits and vegetables in Ziploc bags. Do you have a blender? I highly recommend the NutriBullet, which is a fantastic device that I use every day. Do you have a good set of knives too for like chopping up your vegetables? All right, so the next topic is food shopping. So most food shopping, when you go there, if you don't have like a list of stuff that you want to buy, what you're going to do is just basically do the shotgun approach. You're just going to choose things and maybe choose things based on your emotions or choose things on, just because it looks good. But you have to have a distinct plan when you go into a food store. All right. So when you think about that, you want to basically, prepare a comprehensive list, and which will basically give you like a clear direction for the shopping outing. You want to basically, you don't want to leave anything out on that list, which is very important. When you walk in a store, you'll find like a pattern, and that pattern is you'll see, all the healthier stuff is around the perimeter of the store. So for instance, like your fruits and vegetables are around the perimeter of the store, like your dairy is around the perimeter of the store, and your lean meats. So you want to stay around that region, which is optimal when you go food shopping. All right. So think about this. Like if you go into the center aisles, what do you think's in the center aisles? It's like your cereals, your bad foods as far as like chemicals, and those are the foods that you want to stay away from. The only time that you should go in the center aisles is for like maybe flax seeds or oatmeal or like your healthy oils like olive oil, which would be a great choice. All right, so now we're going to go into like more or less consistency. All right, so when you think about consistency, you think about like what types of foods are good. And anytime you approach like a meal, you should always have like the mindset of, all right, do I have my proteins, such as like things that are dense like eggs, grass-fed meats, fish, and dairy. Like maybe look at, do I have my fruits and vegetables? Like, do I have a fruit and vegetable with my meal? Also look at, do I have a healthy fat? Do I have like maybe avocados or olive oil or flax seeds, nuts, almonds, or pumpkin seeds? And then you have to look at your starches too. So when you look at your starches, you got to say to yourself, okay, do I have some oats or mixed beans or quinoa, which are great solutions for every meal that you approach. So that's the approach that you should take, and that's something that I do every day. So when I actually approach each meal, I use these simple principles when I actually prepare a meal. All right. So now we're going to talk about time of food. So when you think about timing of food, I know there's a lot of information out there, like maybe fast all day or eat, 1 time a day or 2 times a day. Like ideally, you want to eat like at 3 to 4 hour intervals. I mean, that's what the science shows, and that information is out there. And for example, you would eat at maybe 6 a.m. if you woke up, and then maybe have your second meal around 10 o'clock, and then your third meal maybe around like 2 or 4, and then your last meal maybe around 7 o'clock. You feel like if you fail to basically eat at fixed intervals, meaning you're skipping, you're basically depriving yourself of essential nutrients. Plus, you could basically cause you to make irrational decisions and maybe eat something that's completely horrible, like pizza or ice cream. Basically your emotions kind of take over you, and then you just choose something that is significantly unhealthy. So that's why it's important to have like not only your plan, but also to have like good timing as well, because you don't want to forget that. Maybe you can set an alarm every 3 hours to make sure that you eat. I mean, just to remind you, because I know that we get kind of wrapped up in what we're doing, and we kind of forget about the most important thing, and that's yourself. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the quantity of food. Basically, you want to approach each meal. Let's just think about it. You can picture your plate. So your plate should be at least 1/2 of vegetables, maybe 1/4 of that would be your protein, and 1/4 of that could be your fat. And then 1/4 could be like some starch, and that would be like on the side. And what I mean by that is maybe if you work out, your body's going to basically suck up more of the starchy foods after your workouts, which is ideal. But ideally, most of your intake should be of the 1/2 of the vegetables, protein, and fat. So that's how you have to approach it as far as like a picture is concerned when you're choosing your foods. When you think about the quantity of food, you definitely have to purchase, like I talked about when the kitchen makeover. We talked about like measuring cups, spoons, and a food scale will definitely go a long way with controlling portions. If you don't have a food scale or measuring cups or spoons, what you could do is like a fistful of vegetables, um, and also maybe a palm, for like mainly your proteins. Like so, you could think about it that way. That would be a ideal, like, give you ideal measurement for your intake of fruits and your vegetables and your meats. All right. So now we're going to talk about like having some clarity. And when you think about clarity, it's like, what is my vision, and setting up like some clear rules for yourself. And when you go to restaurants, a lot of restaurants tend to like throw out the bread, and then they throw out like things that are high calorie to entice you to eat more. And what you should do is, just have a plan before you go. Like I talked about earlier, like viewing the menu before you go. And this way you'll be able to make a healthy choice. Maybe say to yourself, I'm only going to have one glass of wine and maybe one taste of the dessert, which is fine. You don't have to like overindulge yourself. The thing is, I think a lot of people, what they do is they kind of rationalize. What I mean by that is, if they say to themselves, oh, I worked out super hard every day, I deserve to eat what I want. And with that mindset, what that's going to do is basically put yourself back into like a calorie balance. And when you have that calorie balance, you're not going to lose weight, you're not going to lose body fat, and then you're going to get discouraged, and then you're going to stop. So with that said, you always obviously want to just set that clear intention that you're going to have like one thing, and you don't want to like overdo it just because you did so much exercise. The other thing is, when you think about like social gatherings, these are clear rules too. Like a lot of us go to social gatherings, and if we go there, we'll say to ourselves, oh, I feel bad, and we feel that we have to eat whatever like our friends and family have. That shouldn't be the case. So if your vision and your value is health, you should really look at yourself and say, hey, maybe I should eat before I go, or maybe I should bring something for myself. And like you don't want to interpret it as, or think about like, oh, maybe they're going to be upset if I do that. But the main thing is you want to think about health for yourself. And with that said, like I talked about, you want to eat before you go or bring something with you. And that's what I do. For instance, I'll give you like a little. My brother is a very unhealthy guy, and my sister-in-law, she just cooks. I don't know what it is, but it's like typically, I could say, like macaroni and cheese, and it's like fried foods, and they know exactly how I am, and they literally set aside food for me, or I'll bring something else from it myself that is like healthier, because they understand my values, and they understand that I am clearly health oriented. So just set that intention, and don't feel bad if you have to tell someone that. All right. So another thing is, like, when you have clear rules, maybe have some party yourself. Like when you have social gatherings, maybe this way you can control the food quality as well. All right, so now we're going to talk about some clear priorities. When you set a goal, a lot of us set these huge goals of maybe losing so much weight. You got to think about, do you really believe in yourself to get to that weight? And if you do, then obviously you create a goal, and we have to basically create behaviors to get to that goal. So think about this. You lose 10 pounds. What are the behaviors that you need to do to get to that goal? And that would be, okay, maybe I need to work out 3 times a week. I'd have to do 5 hours of cardio. These are all behaviors. I have to, eat maybe 5 times a day. I have to take in this many calories, or I have to have 5 servings of vegetables a day. I have to have so much protein a day. I mean, those are the behaviors that get you to your goal. Like, for instance, if you fall off of that path and you don't follow through with it, then you're going to fail. So what I mean by that is, you always want to make sure that you have that clear intention to do well, and to keep that mindset that you're going to lose body fat, and you're going to believe in yourself, and you're going to stick to the plan, because like I said before, without that plan, you fail. Another thing, as far as what your clear priorities is, you need to know your schedule. I know a lot of us, sometimes life throws us in different directions. But if you know your schedule and you have an idea of what's going to happen tomorrow and the next day, this way you can plan better. And if you do that, you can always set aside that time, like I talked about, the Sunday ritual or the breakfast ritual, and you could set that time and basically prepare your food, like we talked about. And the one thing is, how important is this to you? I've been doing this a long time, over 10 years, and being a personal trainer, I hear a lot of goals, but how important is it to you when you think about that? If you're failing or if you're not properly following through with everything, maybe it's not important to you. So the only way that you can do it is maybe get other people to hold you accountable for that. Maybe tell people, maybe a friend or family, that, hey, I want to lose 10 pounds, can you help me? And they have to hold you accountable and make you stick to your goal. So for instance, today I want anybody that's listening to this webinar right now, set a goal and tell people about that goal, and then each week, measure, manage, and have obviously the other people that you engage in this, or you ask to hold you accountable, so you can follow through with your goal. So, I really hope like all this information can definitely help you, and that you can implement this today. Like I said, it's not to dump a bunch of facts and get you like overwhelmed to a sense that you get paralyzed. I just want you to take maybe one thing or two things, planning, and also like setting a list aside, and taking that action today, because there's so many diets out there. And do they work? Yeah, some of them work, but the reason they work is because it creates an awareness. You're aware of what's going on, and that's about, like I said, setting that intention and setting that plan. So I really hope all this information was useful, and like I said, start planning today.
Yep, and if you have any questions, we have the chat box there. Those of you that are on live, again, feel free to type in any questions that we can help you with. It's really our core value here at Body Solutions to help all of our clients, not just physically, but also mentally. As you can see, we talked about happiness, so it's sort of that holistic approach of helping the mind and the body, because they're one and the same. And so the great thing I liked about this presentation of having that combination of addressing sort of the mental, psychological aspects as well as the tips to help you sort of physically, is that they work so well together, right? So they shouldn't be viewed as two separate things that you need to do. It's really all sort of overlapping one thing, right? So instead of a lateral view of what we talked about, where maybe happiness is on one side and then fitness and nutrition tips is on the other side, I want you to view the information vertically, where happiness is just higher up, and down, sort of downstream, more specifically, are exactly the tips and the strategies that Rich went over, right? And so again, if you have any questions, go ahead and type in. If not, you will get this recording. It will be sent to you if you register, so you can kind of rewatch. We definitely did go through a good amount of information and some great tips that you can implement right now to really help you achieve more happiness and, of course, the weight in the body that you want. So I'm just going to leave it sort of open mic for the next couple minutes. If you have any questions, just go ahead and type that in, and we'll be here to answer your questions. And if after 2 to 3 minutes, if no one wants to ask any questions, then we'll end it. And we plan on really having these things more on a regular basis, because there's just so much great information that we have. Rich and I both have been doing this for 10, 15, 20 years, and we just have so much information we would like to share with you. And I know I've sent out, and Rich has sent out sort of separate short videos, but I like this presentation format because, one, I get to interact with the viewers directly. You can sort of ask questions. And two, having this longer format just allows us to get bigger concepts delivered to you, instead of just watching like a video, one-way video. So if you actually found this helpful, just email one of us back and say, hey, it'd be great to have this sort of more often, and then we'll put something together where we do. I would love to have different staff members come in with me and just kind of talk about their expertise. We have such great staff. I just want to be able to share their knowledge and their experience with the Body Solutions family, basically. All right, so if you have any questions, go ahead and type in the chat box, and we're here to answer them.
Is there anyone on there or no?
Okay, so I'm assuming you guys and girls are being shy. So we're just going to end the presentation. I hope you found this helpful. And again, you're going to get a recording, and definitely contact us for feedback and if there's any topics you would like to know in the next sort of presentation. Have a great day.